Hi, this is Aaron Price with Super Inspection Pros, and welcome to another edition of Have a Sip podcast. Today, our guest is a mortgage loan officer, Josh Baker.
What's going on?
Thank you so much for coming out here.
Yeah, for sure.
And Josh, I can still remember how we met. I think it was at some after-hours chamber event or something like that.
I think it was a YPN thing.
Yeah, that's what it was. And we were Bigger Pockets fans.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
So,
good night. That's going back.
Yeah, we both listened to it. I don't listen to it so much anymore. But for those of you that don't know, Bigger Pockets was a radio podcast kind of before podcasts got real big.
Yeah.
And it was just all about real estate investing.
All about the different ways you could try to figure out how to get into real estate investing, different strategies you could use, acquisition processes. I remember that's where the Burr method kind of took off. People started talking about that back. I guess that's like pre-TikTok, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's been
it's been a while.
7-8 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
So that show has evolved. The real estate industry's definitely evolved.
Oh, yeah.
And but it was just it was kind of rare at that point to bump into someone who also listened to Bigger Pockets.
Yeah. Now I probably haven't listened to the show in forever.
Every once in a while, I'll put it on the. I'll be at the gym and I'll be like, oh, what's the market update? Because he'll do a monthly market update. Just interesting type stuff. So that's how we bonded, and I've kept up with Josh on social media, and he's a very interesting guy, always posting hilarious stuff, and outside-the-box thinker, and so I wanted to have him in on the podcast, so thanks for being here, Josh.
Hey, absolutely, man.
So what's one unconventional belief about mortgages that most lenders would disagree with?
That's kind of a controversial take. That down payment assistance is actually more hurtful for most borrowers than it is helpful.
Why do you say that?
So just from a common sense perspective, and having worked in this industry for as long as I have at this point, if you care about consumers, you need to care about their long-term success. So if you have a consumer that comes to you or a potential borrower that comes to you, and you're going through their financials, the bank statements, you're looking at everything, and you can see that just based on lifestyle factors, underemployment, wage disparity, whatever it is, they have a severe inability to save money. Mm-hmm. You're not really helping that person out by then putting them into a several $100,000 financial liability where they're now responsible for all of the integral systems operating within it. What I mean by that is if you can't save 3% for a conventional down payment loan or 3.5% for an FHA loan, what are you going to do if it's the middle of summer and your air conditioning unit fails? What are you going to do if the fridge goes out? What are you going to do if, God forbid,
they call the home inspector
and yell at him, right? Yeah. But some of these things cost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to repair. Mm-hmm. And if you're not able to save several $1,000s to get into the home, I don't think it's that illogical to assume you're probably not going to have the ability to save the money to then build somewhat of a financial cushion so that you can absorb some sort of adverse event like this, which nobody plans on their roof failing. No one plans on the AC unit going out. No one plans for, a plumbing incident to occur that puts an inch of water throughout the house.
When you get down payment assistance, you have to repay that back?
Sometimes. Okay. So that's dependent upon the program that people are doing. There's a myriad of different options that exist out there. Some of them, like the Hometown Heroes one, which is actually one that is good. It takes the old USDA 1% down program as a concept and kind of builds off of that. So they give you a bond. That bond is 0% interest. There is no payment associated with it. The catch is it has to be paid back if you ever do a cash out refi or sell the house. Mm-hmm. Right? So it is a bond sitting on the property, but it's not an active second lien. A lot of the down payment programs have a second lien component. So you're getting the loan for the actual house, and then you're getting an additional loan for the down payment. And they'll offer different flavors and varieties of terms with that, where some are forgivable after 5 years or 3 years, or some are not forgivable at all. But they do have an associated interest rate with them, and it does have a cost. So you're not only you're going from renting something and unable to save to now paying not one but two mortgage payments. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's illogical to assume you're probably still not going to have an effective savings rate if you couldn't save while renting and you didn't have the burden of maintenance on the property.
Is it just a different variation of the old 80-20 loan? And an 80-20 loan is where you had 80% of the principal and then another loan for 20% of the principal where they could get you in there with no down payment.
Like the Pick-a-Pays and stuff like that. Yeah. Those are all pre-08 products that existed. So we don't have that anymore. Kind of. It's more heavily regulated. So there's national programs that do the 101.5% loan to value, right? So they're throwing in on a 96.5% loan, they're throwing in whatever 3 or 4% to get you to that 101.5 to get you into the property with effectively nothing out of pocket. You will still have some closing costs, title fees, insurance, if you're paying a realtor, discount points, whatever. But the actual down payment itself is covered by either a national entity, a local entity, like the state of Florida, for example, or there's municipal programs where certain cities will have their own thing going on.
Do you think that the real estate market is addicted to some of these down payment assistance programs? And what I mean by that is that it could be dead. We get a new down payment assistance program, and then boom, it sugars the market, and everybody's busy again.
It's cheap money, generally speaking. It's easy money, generally speaking, that the market is kind of hooked on the industry and its various verticals. So I guess to answer it simply, yes. Yeah, because it makes the phone ring. It gets people in the door. It gets people out shopping. It makes them interested again. And I would say probably 10 to 15% of the people that call are actually going to end up in one of those programs. The majority are just going to figure out that they could have qualified the entire time. They just didn't know it, right? So, but the easier programs that make it easier for borrowers to get into properties have done a lot to keep the machine turning, I guess, through different market adversities that have showed up.
If the mortgage industry had a reset button, what's the first thing you would change?
So, like, if I could just completely change the industry,
change one of the aspects that you see. Maybe it's lived its time out and it's no longer even a valuable.
I would increase costs.
Increase the cost.
I would increase the cost of doing business and licensure.
Yeah, for
sure, like 100%. I know that's another unpopular opinion for you guys, but if I hurt your feelings in 25, stay tuned. I'll do it in 26 too.
Yeah.
Right? Increase the cost of licensure. Increase the education cost. Make it more difficult for people to be in the business. That's the first thing I would do.
I agree with that in my own business because you can be bagging groceries, go get your home inspector's license, and you're an automatic competitor with people that have been in the business for 20 years.
And it's, technology has gone a very long way to modernize banking and mortgage. It's still leagues behind different, even verticals within real estate, but it's come a long way. Efficiencies have improved, profitability and margin has improved in a lot of respects, and you still have a lot of these mega, like really large companies, retail banks, that are operating at egregious margins. They're not training staff. Like you said, you could be bagging groceries, become an inspector. That's not dramatically different from the pipeline for a low-level loan originator, right? Like they come in, they're good at sales, and they can get business because they have a good line, whatever. They don't necessarily know the ins and outs of the job or the technicalities behind it or how to underwrite stuff. And they end up getting borrowers in hot water. They cost them earnest money. They cause realtors problems because they're wasting good leads on somebody who doesn't know how to convert or doesn't know how to advise. It just complicates the industry and it saturates it with people who aren't serious. They're here because it is not rocket science always to do a loan, right? It's not rocket science to convince somebody to send you business. It can get complicated and nuanced depending on the scenario, but increasing education, increasing the licensing costs would create a better barrier to entry such that we would end up with people who were more serious about being committed to really learning how to do the job at a high level. And that would improve realtors' experiences, that would improve margins, that would improve customer satisfaction, that would improve the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I think the whole real estate industry is just, it's too easy to get into. People are coming and going. I'll try this out for a little while. If it doesn't work out, I'll try something else.
Sure.
And we deal with that at every level, pretty much except appraiser. To become an appraiser is ridiculous.
Well, that's the opposite side of the coin, right? Like I personally think we need to decrease some of the stipulations to become an appraiser because there's so many people who would like to retire. They've built successful businesses. They've done well for themselves, and they have great reputations. But they're on the tail end of their 50s now, and they're like, hey, man, I want a path out. And it takes an act of Congress to go become a licensed appraiser. So it's not very viable for them to find somebody to buy their business or to have a son or daughter take over, because the requirements are insane to become an appraiser. So I think a good example we've highlighted here is kind of regulation going to extremes on either end. You have not enough, and then you have entirely way too much.
What's a program or strategy you wish more home buyers understood?
Like a program specifically for them to use, or a strategy like within the home?
I guess one that could change their options, their home buying strategy. Maybe it's some, we hear of the, 20% down's usually the old rule.
Sure.
It's probably the best loan product. You've got 3%, no percent. Is there something where there's a pocket in there where it's 10, 15% makes sense?
Yeah. It's going to depend on where the market's at and what the secondary market's actively hunting. So when you originate a loan, that loan gets packed up and it gets sold into a debt tranche that gets purchased, and that gets packaged into a mortgage-backed security, right? Mm-hmm. So that second person, so you originate a loan, my loan, it's getting bought by Jim. Jim's going to sell to Goldman Sachs. What Jim is looking for is what is going to be incentivized when you start selling the product, right? So it could be 10%, it could be 12, it could be 15. The sweet spot that exists, very generally speaking, that kind of walks this line between capital outlay or acquisition cost for a property, and then the majority of the benefit to the interest rate is going to be in that 10 to 15% range, interestingly enough. Okay. At 5%, you're going to start getting into a little bit more expensive mortgage insurance because the liability is increasing, right? So that goes down just a hair at 10 to 15%. At 20%, the interest rate goes up. It actually becomes slightly more expensive by about 1/8 of a point, because the bank now looks at that loan as more risk on, because there's no insurance policy covering it. So if you quit paying me, I'm on the hook for all this money, right? There's no insurance policy for me to cash out. So that 10 to 15% range still leaves you with effective mortgage insurance in place, but it's limiting the cost of the mortgage insurance to its logical low point. You're not going to get it much lower by paying over 15%. That said, kind of working in reverse, one of the best strategies for borrowers to look at pragmatically is going to be acquiring the property with as little money out of pocket as possible. So making a 5% down payment or making a 10% down payment, most people are very upset to find out that making 20 to 30% as a down payment really doesn't add up to making much sense for them.
All your cash gets locked up in the property.
You've got all your cash locked up into the property. It's there. That's great. I mean, on paper, technically you have that money. It's an equity position in the property. That's a beautiful thing. I love that. But if you have to actually use it, well, now you're at the behest of an outdated industry that's going to take 21 to 30 days to access your capital. It's going to take however much money in fees, right? You have title fees. You have to redo the escrow account. You've got all this beeswax that has to be done in order to get the money back out. And with the time velocity of money, we're sitting here being told every day that inflation's defeated and it's so much better and whatever. We haven't been below 2.5% inflation for 5 years. So if your money's locked up in a house that's appreciating at 2.7% and inflation's running at 2.5 to 3%, are you losing money or gaining money on the property?
Best case is even.
Right.
Yeah.
You could take the money and put it into a money market account, make 5% or 6%. It's super nominal. I get it. You're not making that much, but it's something, right? Yeah. Or more importantly, you have the money on hand during economic uncertainty or periods of inflation where you can actually deploy the capital to use it for an emergency fund. Say the AC unit does go out. Say you have to get tires for the car, or you're buying groceries or whatever. Having the cash on hand is worth infinitely more today in today's terms than it would be in 10 or 15 or 20 years when you go to pull the money out.
One thing you said is an antiquated industry.
For sure.
30 days to close, sometimes 45.
Oh, yeah.
Why do we have these absurd timelines? And what do you see in the future? Is it going to get shorter? Can we get it down to 2.5, 3 weeks?
you would have to overhaul a very extensive. This is a very good example to touch on our prior point about overregulation. So, post 2008, with the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Act and Glass-Steagall and all that stuff that was redone post 2008 subprime mortgage collapse, that's where a lot of the timeline stuff comes from now, right? The rules regarding appraisers, the MVCC rules. You can't legally close a transaction in less than 7 days. You can close it on day 8, right?
Even with cash?
Even with cash. You can't close in less than 7 days. Most cash transactions will be done in 14 to give the title company time to kind of do their thing. You would have to deregulate or re-regulate, change the way the regulations are viewed, written, and intended on the mortgage industry to increase the speed. Right now, you have this insane requirement with underwriting, how it has to be underwritten, who has to be involved to do that. How many people are involved in a mortgage itself is insane. Like just on the banking side. That doesn't include all the people running around in the beehive known as the title company.
Yeah.
You're out there doing your inspections. The appraiser's doing his thing. He's got somebody at the office typing the report, right? In the bank itself, you've got 10 to 15 different people who are involved in touching that file behind the scenes to make it happen. Technology would dramatically streamline the number of hands in the pile. And by all means and measures, logically, you could assume it would take less time. But to do that, you have to change all the rules.
So it's going to be harder.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Than just some AI program coming out and streamlining it.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay.
It will eventually. I wouldn't say that's like a thing in the near term.
Yeah.
We're not going to see that in 26.
It's ripe for a disruption or a takeover by that
sure.
stuff. It's one of the most pleasant things in my life has been going through a real estate transaction. It's terrible.
It's horrible.
And, it's like it doesn't have to be this way.
No, it doesn't. It does not have to be that miserable. I mean, just in the last 10 years, banking has really gotten its act together with accepting digital documents, right? PDFs and e-signatures, thanks to COVID, and being able to e-sign and DocuSign stuff has rid us of a lot of the paper copy beeswax that existed 10 years ago. But just 10 years ago, it was even more time consuming and somehow even more miserable because communication was that much slower. It's improved by leagues, but still, compared to what it could be, it is miles behind. It would be exponentially faster, orders of magnitude easier and less stressful, and as a result, probably a lot cheaper. The downside to what you're talking about, what we're discussing right now, is it would drive down margins for everybody. Title companies would make less. Lenders would make less. The banks subsequently would make less. Insurance companies who have really dealt with this already, they've been heavily commoditized already. Look at their margins and how their businesses operate now versus 10 years ago. It's wildly different. Yeah. But they've kind of been on the cutting edge of how does tech replace somebody or at least decrease the body count necessary to get something done. Homeowners insurance, car insurance, health insurance, they're prime examples of efficiencies that could be gained across the industry.
What's the most damaging piece of advice people get from TikTok or their family or their friends about getting a mortgage?
The most damaging piece of advice that they get?
I guess misinformation, right? The thing that, people tell you, but is not truly the best thing for you. I was always buy a house. It's the best thing you can do for your life. That kind of thing.
Buying is better than renting, I think, is more often than not a pretty rough reality check for people when they do get into it. They hear that. A lot of people advocate that. Oh, you're going to make a payment on a house. It might as well be yours. There's some truth to that. I'm not going to discount it. It's beautiful to grow equity in a house, to live in the same place for a long time. There's a lot of studies that suggest children benefit more from that. Like, I'm not saying it's not a good idea to buy a house. Obviously, I profit from you guys buying houses, so that'd be great if you did it. But it's not always the best answer for everybody. It depends on where they're at in their life. You know what I mean? What can they afford? Renting a house and just calling somebody and being like, hey, man, the fridge is leaking water. That's pretty sweet.
It
Because
is.
when you own the house,
Yeah.
you're calling,
Fixing the fridge, and what did it damage?
exactly right. And it costs a bunch of money. You're living in the house. You're trying to do rehab or hiring somebody to come in and do nickel dime projects or whatever while you're living in the house. And, it's a lot different than a lot of people realize. The time cost, the material cost of actually owning a home properly, preventive maintenance, doing all that stuff is a lot higher than a lot of people expect. Yeah. It's wonderful. I think they should do it. I don't think that it's something they should be pressured into societally like they are.
Yeah.
The second one, because I have more than one of these, would be buying a rental property. Everybody and their grandma is being taught on TikTok, you're going to get rich quick. You own quite a few. I have, over the years, owned more than my fair share. It is not all it's cracked up to be all the time. People think, I'm going to go buy this house and that's it. I'm retired. It's like, look, man, 6 months of vacancy, 3 months of vacancy, or roof needs to be replaced, AC unit needs to be replaced. You're making $200-300 a month in margin on the unit. You're not making any profit for the rest of the year if you have a $3,000 expense.
Yeah,
right?
In a depreciating market.
In a depreciating market, God forbid, or what did you experience? I haven't had to deal with it in the last 3 years because I haven't held any rentals, but the insurance costs increasing.
Yeah.
Tax increases were pretty violent too. So, that's eating your margin
They
up.
made it
right
non-profitable
overnight. I'm
to
sure.
own it. And if it's not in an appreciating market,
what's the point?
Yeah, so I cut a lot of them.
Yeah.
Just to get back to zero. And I tell you, one of my biggest beefs right now is all of the systems of the home, the AC, the roof, the plumbing, the water heater, the appliances, even the materials that you might put in the house, such as flooring, the carpet. None of it's built to last anymore.
Oh, no.
They got you on this wheel.
It's a 5 to 7 year replacement plan.
And with insurance going through the roof and then taxes also, one thing happens and it's not worth it. So I think we're at a weird spot in the housing community because, man, I look at some of these houses I do inspections for and I go, man,
I can only imagine.
Why would anyone buy this? Why would they put themselves in this? And they're looking at it from one perspective of like, well, I'm going to own a home and I'm not renting.
Sure.
But dude, you're about to get whacked in 5 years or 7 years or whatever, that time frame is. All this stuff's going to come up. And if it's not appreciating,
what are you going to do?
Man, it's hard to keep reinvesting in that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I don't know what the right answer is to it, though.
Yeah, because I'm always like, well, you got to live somewhere.
You have to live somewhere. There's no two ways around that. You have to live somewhere. It is true, even though it's kitschy and gross. You're going to make somebody's mortgage payment, whether it's yours or a landlord's. I get it.
Right.
But when you start looking at the hard cost of ownership, all the internal systems, it really does. Like, quality sucks.
Yeah.
It's just manufacturer quality is trash now.
Yep.
I'm not going to say specific brands so I don't get in trouble, but we've all had the washers and dryers that are a year or two old and it needs a new circuit board, or the dryer coil also needs to be replaced, or the refrigerator's leaking, or, whatever. Like, it's just this kind of unending line of, I'm going to go spend a ton of money on these things at Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever. I'm going to get it to the house. It's super sick for 12 months. And then suddenly the fridge filter quits working, or, why does my washer smell weird?
Some component.
It's shaking apart. Like, it's just, it doesn't make sense because you're paying a premium for this stuff. And it just kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Whereas,
I would say they keep us on tilt so that we can never truly figure out how much we're spending on this stuff. Because there's always some other thing coming out.
It's an interesting perspective. Yeah.
There's always, a newer appliance or this. And it's a lot of money people are spending on all this stuff. And then just to upkeep the home. This is one of my biggest hidden things that people don't ever think. You got your pest guy.
Yep.
You got your pool guy. You got your lawn guy. Nobody does anything for themselves hardly anymore. We're all too busy working.
Right. To pay the lawn guy and the pest guy and the HVAC guy who has to come out and maintain the system.
Yeah, and this service and that service. And you're just getting, hit from so many angles when you own a home that when you're a renter, you don't deal with that. Sure, you might be paying a little bit more of a premium, but
convenience is kind
it's a nice setup also, and I feel like it never gets talked about like that.
If you can rent in a really nice area, right? I'm renting right now actually. Ended up getting rid of my properties right through the divorce, so you have to live somewhere.
Yeah.
So I'm renting in downtown Sanford, and it's kind of awesome.
Yeah,
it's sweet. House is badass. It's super nice. The area is amazing. I live around a bunch of mid-century moderns across from the Palucci house. Like, the area is absolutely gorgeous, super convenient. None of it's my problem. It's awesome.
Yeah, and you can stay mobile. Something comes up, you want it.
That's what we're looking at now. Is like, hey, I really love living here. I want to get a little bit farther into downtown. So start looking at those things, start preparing financially for that, start trying to figure out, what those moves are going to be, identify which properties in the area that we're interested in so I can keep an eye on it. When it does come up, I'm going to be in position to move on it, and I'll get what I want. It's going to be great. Renting is, people do it out of necessity, and I feel like a lot of other people in this industry make it seem like a bad thing. It isn't. Renting is fantastic. If there's people moving from out of state, I get this a lot. I got a guy now that's coming from California, another guy that's coming from Idaho, moving here. Right off the jump, they've spent maybe 6 days here total. Came down for a business thing, got told they were being relocated down here, came down again for another 3 days. I'm just going to buy a house. I'm like, bro, have you considered renting? No. It's a 30-minute drive from Deltona to Orlando where I'm going to be working. It's like, in traffic, maybe ideal situation might be a little longer. But they're just dead set. Well, I'm just going to buy.
Yeah.
You might want to try to live in one or two of these areas, maybe. Maybe you won't like it. Maybe you won't like the drive. Maybe you find out the traffic pattern sucks. Like, there is a use case for renting and not shortcutting yourself and just going straight into ownership.
Yeah, but we're programmed to...
Owning a house ultimately should be the goal. Owning a house should be the goal. How you get to that goal is going to be different for everybody, right? I just advocate for people to take their time, to be smart, to ask the right questions to multiple people, to prevent yourself from being sold by somebody who's just looking for a paycheck. But most importantly, people call me and ask me advice constantly, right, off of Facebook stuff. I tell them all the same thing. I don't pay your bills, right? I can arm you with the information you need to make a great decision, but only you're going to know what the great decision is. Then you're going to call me back, and I'm going to ultimately do what you tell me to do after I've given you the information to go out and conquer, right? Think about it. Take your time. Make a decision that's right for you and your family. Do not let anybody pressure you into doing stuff just because that's what Jim's doing down the street, or that's what Ashley just did last week, or whatever. Move at your own pace as you're comfortable, and I think you'll find success and you'll be happy.
What's the one trend that you're preparing for that most lenders aren't talking about right now?
Everybody's gearing up for it, but they're not talking about it, and that is refinances, right? I know a lot of people think that sounds pretty contrary because you hear about these mythical, I'm on a 3% interest or 2.5% rate, whatever. That, people have children, they need bigger houses, they're going to move, they want to add on. Life keeps going, dude. Mortgage spreads are improving significantly. Rates nominal to the street now are between 6.25 territory right now. So it's improving quite a bit. This time last year, you were at like 6.7. Not in that way. My kids drive me insane with that shit. Yeah. 6.8 territory last year. So year on year, market improvement looks really great. I think refinances are going to pick up in velocity going through 26. But that's kind of the more obvious. I think the less obvious is going to be purchases. I think homeowners are going to find a lot more value in the resale market in 26 and 27 going forward, due largely to what the new home builders are doing. New home builders are really uniquely positioned in this market. Obviously, they control the construction process. They control the end product. They often own the title company, the insurance company, and the lender. So they're able to kind of cut and massage numbers and losses across a pretty broad base in the business to adapt to demand and supply issues, right? So what you're seeing a lot of the new builds do is they're slashing prices very aggressively. Those prices become comps. those comps circulate through and they become self-evident, or they become evident in the resale market. And I think that's going to cause a nice easing in prices on the resale market from a value perspective. I don't think we're going to have a crash. I don't think values are going to drop, some egregious amount. But it stands to reason if you see an MI development or, an Ashton Woods development and they come through and their per unit per average is like a 12% price decrease to move the product, that's going to translate 1-to-1 due to the MVCC rules into an 8 to 12% price decrease in the neighboring resale, which then drives its neighbors, so on and so forth, right?
Is that a pretty good leading indicator? Like when builders are cutting, the market kind of follows that?
Well, they have to, right? Because the appraiser, the most heavily regulated one of all of us in the transaction, they have to go in and look at what are the comparable properties within X bubble, right? Within X amount of feet or whatever, half mile or some beeswax like that, from the house I have a contract on. Well, if they pick up, if that falls in the zone, right, and on a per square basis, it's similar bedrooms, similar square footage, similar lot size, well, it becomes a comp. There's no two ways around it. And if you're selling your house, of course you think it's worth $1 million. It's your house.
Right.
D.R. Horton's selling his, though, instead of $400,000 like you're asking, he's selling a brand new one for $375,000. That's some pretty significant downward pressure for you to compete against, because you can't give them an interest rate buy down. You're not paying their closing costs. You're not doing all of this beeswax that the builders are able to do to make the phones ring and to turn contracts and increase deal velocity, right? So your only mechanism is going to be to lower the price. And I think in there somewhere, prices will get to a point where it's less offensive to buyers. Hopefully we see wages increase and improve. Hopefully the government doesn't print a ton of money and drive inflation. We'll get to an equilibrium point where wage and prices meet.
So should I start buying houses when the builders start going up in price? Is that a good time to think about buying? Because that's kind of, they're dictating the market.
Yeah.
If they stop taking a haircut and it kind of either goes to zero or, positive for them, prices are escalating.
They are, but
I know that that's coming down the line.
Yeah, but I think trying to time the market is probably foolish.
Yeah. But if you could pay attention to new builds and what they're offering,
I think you need multiple points to align before you start going into like an acquisition strategy or sales strategy. So the 2 points that I would highlight, okay, builders cutting prices and or deal velocity for builders in general, right? Good news. All this stuff is publicly available because a lot of these companies are publicly traded, like Pulte, D.R. Horton, right? You can go in, you can listen to their quarterly sales call. You can see how many units are they moving in the Southeast on a per month basis. How many units are they building? What's pending CO, right? And you can kind of do some math to figure out what their deal velocity looks like. As that slows down, couple that with, hey, they're cutting prices. Okay, cool. Add to that, what does my days on market locally look like? Because at the end of the day, yeah, it's super cool to look at D.R. Horton. It's super cool to look at Pulte. I do that because I'm a macroeconomist. I look at the biggest picture possible, right? What's happening in China and how does that affect the 10-year treasury here, which is going to affect mortgage-backed securities. You as a local real estate purchaser, you're going to use my information that I put out here, and then you're going to look at the local market, right? And that's going to be closer to your execution point. So yes, looking at what the builders are doing is probably a good canary in the coal mine, but you want to add to that a second layer and start looking at what does the days on market in my local area or my target market look like, right? If those are creeping up to 90, 120, what's the delisting rate look like? How many people are taking their houses off the market? Why? Because it was on the market for 120 days, or it was on the market for 6 months, or it's gone through 5 price drops and nobody bought it. Great. That's fantastic. That would suggest to me it's time for me to go risk on as an investor, because I'm going to go out and I'm just going to start throwing some feelers out there. Find some of these properties that have been sitting for a long time. Go make an offer. Admittedly, it's not popular, but you're going to Facebook Marketplace them, right? Like you're going to hit them with something that is probably offensive to them, but it gets them talking and it lets them kind of reality check them into the market. Now, I don't know if I would say now is the best time, but somewhere kind of in this soon, right? Could be now. I don't know. It could be in 6 months. But we're kind of getting into range where it's going to be a really excellent time for buyers to start buying, because you have the stars are aligning for them. You have more desperate sellers. Properties have been sitting on the market longer. Seasonality, right? Wintertime is terrible in the real estate market in Florida. You kind of have the stars aligning across the board to where the average buyer can go out, not even an investor, can go out and talk to the average seller and be like, hey, man, can you pay some percentage of my closing costs? Look, if that dude's been on the market for 120 days and they've already cut $40,000 off the price, that's a pretty high probability they're going to say yeah, because they need to move it, right? Maybe they got a return to work notification. They now have a second mortgage somewhere. Maybe they started a new build that took longer than expected. They now have a second mortgage they have to pay. Who knows what's going on in their life? But I can tell you what's not great is the fact that the house they have several $100,000 in equity in is still sitting on the market. So kind of taking those things all in, using the builder's data to drive decision-making from an acquisition strategy is not a terrible idea. I would also add to that, what does days on market look like? What does the unemployment rate look like? What does the overall operating cost look like for me in this area? Insurance improving, taxes potentially going down. What are we dealing with?
Yeah. The beauty about buying a new build as a rental is that you've got basically
everything's
a
warranted,
10 to 15 year run
Yeah.
of nothing really CapEx coming out, expenditures for big appliances and ACs, roofs, and all that stuff. And if it's an appreciating market, you got
it's hard to
10
miss.
years of appreciation. That's a good timing.
It would be a difficult to miss with that strategy. If you could align your shoulders, would be the hard part, right? So your entrance into an acquisition cycle and then your exit would be tough, because you're obviously trying to get as close to a good buying point as possible, and then you're going to go through a nice buying phase. You're going to profit well, and then you're going to be looking for the door eventually, right? When do I sell? Do I sell into a crowded market? Do I sell early and miss out on potential profit? Whatever. So your entrance and exit are tough. That's why I say timing is kind of foolish. You're going to lose or you're going to gain, but as long as you have the general momentum working in your favor from an investment perspective, you're going to win a lot more than you lose, right? But the concept of buy brand new to rent is super compelling, so much so that Pulte and these big national billion-dollar publicly traded home builders are doing BTR, or build to rent. They're building entire subdivisions that are intended solely just to become rental properties for them. That's wild. I mean, but they're going to make a solid return on them.
It is.
And then they'll sell it to whoever comes along and buys it as the systems start failing and CapEx kicks in.
I have it whenever I do inspections. I'm like, all right, this is a first time cycling through. And it's not an investment situation. It's just a person who bought the home, they lived in it, and now they're moving on. And I'm always like, man, it's at like that 8-year mark. That next person, if they're there for 5 years, they're going to be the ones dealing with all the things. And if nothing's been done, which is the case a lot of times, there's sometimes where it hasn't even been painted, since the builder grade paint. That's going to be $3,000 to $5,000. The AC is going to be coming up, dude. There's another $5,000. And it's just this endless beatdown. Once a year beatdown, something happens for the next 5 years is what it seems like. And so it's that timing. I'm always like, man, this person's getting out of this house at a good time. And then for the buyer, I'm always like, man, they're buying this house at not the best time, because it's coming up. As long as you know that, and I tell them that, I'm like, look, nothing's been done. Nothing's been done here. Whoever buys this house next, this is what is to be expected. A year or two, man,
you're gonna be out.
Every year it's going to be something.
It's
fine right now. It might be fine for the next year or two. It's going to start. And then then it's you, which is not bad. Like we said, you got to live somewhere. You got to do all this. But in a depreciating market, it's tough. Appreciating market, you can live with it, and it's just part of owning real estate.
Cost of doing business.
Yep, exactly. And that's what your grandma and your friends and just folks around the area, they say, buy a house, buy a house, buy a house. It's not always the best thing. you got to think about it one level deeper.
Yeah, being prepared properly, having the right expectations, and having the right strategy that when things do come up, it's not going to derail you. Owning a home can be really awesome. You get to customize everything. You get to make it what you want, make it the nicest house in the neighborhood. There's a lot of pros here. You get to have a lot of fun with it. Being prepared properly allows you to have the joys of homeownership. You know what I mean?
What's the most important question a buyer never asks you?
How much should I borrow?
And why should they ask you that?
Because if that was trained into borrowers coming in, how much should I borrow? It activates something that a lot of mortgage guys and girls would be very displeased with, which is their fiduciary responsibility. If they don't ask, they're not held, right? You go through, like, the mortgage process sucks, man. It's a financial colonoscopy, right? Like, yeah. I'm going through all of your bank statements, retirement accounts, credit report. I got it all. And you're calculating how much can you afford based on QM law or qualified mortgage law. No more than 50% DTI on the back end, 47 up front, whatever. I'm going through all of that. I see what your spending habits are. I see how this works out. I can much more accurately forecast what you're going to do with your money before you can, oftentimes, by the time it's over. And just the default position for every borrower is, how much can I afford?
Right.
How much home can I buy? It's like, well, bro, how much home you can qualify for versus how much home you should buy. Two very different numbers more often than not. So having them ask, how much should I borrow? Okay, cool. How much do you want to save every month? You want a 10% savings rate? Then you shouldn't borrow more than X, right? Now go look for those houses. You're going to have an effective savings rate within the home. That's great. It's going to drive your IRR in the house, your reinvestment into different asset classes and stuff like that. It's going to set you up for success long-term in wealth building outside of just the house itself. I feel like a lot of people have been taught that houses are almost like Bitcoin, right? Like, I'm going to buy those and it's just going to become infinitely more valuable, and that's how I'm going to retire. That's what a lot of boomers think too. Love that for them, but I don't think that's hyper intelligent to have your stool be made up of one leg, right? You need to have multiple legs on the stool in your investment strategy. Being able to save money, decrease costs, and diversify is smarter, in my opinion.
All right. Where can people find out more about you and get in touch with you at?
Social media. So at Josh Mortgages FL. It's pretty much the same across the board. Facebook, I do a lot of writing there. I'm in the process of building a newsletter. A couple of them, one that's consumer facing, one that's geared more towards people that work in the industry. So more information about that will be coming out. And then levelhomeloans.com, which we're currently reconstructing to become more of a resource for consumers to kind of talk about a lot of the stuff that we actually talked about here, to give them more informational content that's not geared towards sales, but geared towards informing them so they're going to make better decisions and then communicate with the appropriate people throughout the process.
So that's been this episode of Have a Sip podcast. Hopefully it's brought some different thoughts to your mind, looked at real estate a different lens. That's the beauty about this industry, is that there's all different kind of folks, all different kind of people in it, all different kind of mind, thinking of the industry. And Josh Baker's an excellent mortgage loan originator and a super thoughtful guy, and you'll have fun working with him.